Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 27. And today we have an interview with a person that's very special to me. He's been friends of mine for years and years now. I've been to his school many, many times to teach seminars and private lessons, and it's always a great time. He's got really passionate students, and most importantly, he's really passionate about what he does. Today we have the very special guest, Master Isaac Costley, or as his students and I call him affectionately, Master C.
Yes.
And some of the topics that we're going to be getting into today, and some of the topics that we're very fortunate that Master Costley has been vocal about on social media, are some of the issues surrounding racial inequality that we're dealing with in the country right now, and police brutality. And I know that those of you that are fans of the show know that I typically like to interject some of my personal stories and my personal opinions, but at least for the first part of the show today, it is not going to be any of that. I am here to be educated just as well as many of you that are tuning in might be educated. And really the goal is to foster conversation about how we can increase equality and diversity in the martial arts community and what the martial arts industry can do during all of these social issues that we're dealing with right now. And Master Costley is going to give us his thoughts, his feelings. I know he's got some personal anecdotes that he may share with you guys today. And I really, really appreciate him for doing that. And then we're also going to get into some other martial arts topics. So it's not going to be exclusively a social discussion today. We're also going to be getting into some other martial arts topics surrounding COVID-19 and surrounding sport karate and a couple of other topics as well. So feel free to stay tuned for that as well. But first, I want to give a little bit of an introduction to Master Costley. He's a hero for our country in a couple of different ways. He served in the military. He also trains military personnel now through his school. He's served as a police officer. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to instructing. He's an excellent business owner. I've always been blown away with his instructing ability and his business acumen. And so I can't say enough how grateful I am to have you on the show, sir. And now I want to give you an opportunity. Give our audience some of your martial arts background. Tell us about Master C.
Well, I guess it's nothing too far out of the ordinary. I started as a young child, been into martial arts now 47 years. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of different instructors who kind of told me when I was younger and that they were really humble, but more than telling me, they showed me they were humble. And what I mean by that is none of those instructors tried to tell me that they were the best in everything. So because of that, they always reached out and brought in different people to train us in their particular school, even if it was a different style. So this kind of helped me to realize that as I grew into martial arts, I didn't have to say that my Hapkido is the only Hapkido, or my Taekwondo, or my Muay Thai, or whatever it may be. I was able to go ahead and get in all of those things and get the experience from a lot of different people to see that you can stay humble and you can still grow. From my inner city, bringing up in Maryland to going into military, I had to learn how to protect myself. For those that are out there, as you know, being a light-skinned guy in an inner city, you have to fight every day. To make it even worse, I'm a light-skinned black guy with freckles. I had to fight every day. So it wasn't just bullying, and then we're going to talk about some issues today. It wasn't just white on black. It was darker black against light-skinned black. We had our own interracial issues as well. From my time back there in Maryland to then going into the military, I was able to do things for my country that I take pride in. From there, became a firefighter and then a police officer. Did a lot of great things as a police officer. The entire time I kept teaching martial arts. But I guess what really helped me to get my goal was I understood early on, which some people aren't going to agree with. To me, there's a difference between martial arts and reality life skills. I decided years ago to focus on the reality life art skills, which means it's great to do the tricking. I have nothing against it, but I'm not going to teach my people how to do tricking until they know what to do when somebody grabs them by the throat. So I decided I wanted to stay towards the reality side, which means I kind of pushed some of the fancy things away and said I'd rather have my people do direct skills that I know work from being in inner city, from being in the military, from being a police officer. I couldn't do fancy. I had to do effective. And there was a difference between what I saw and what I experienced from fancy, and then people saying this is going to work in the real world. And 99% of the people saying that has never had any real world experience. So that kind of molded me to go ahead and kind of teach the way that my instructors taught me, and it has been a privilege of mine to get people like you to come out, that I can see how you take that bow staff and using that bow staff. And believe me, behind the scenes, you don't know. I have had arguments with grandmasters that have seen what you do with the bow staff that would then write something, and then I would write back to that grandmaster respectfully in a private message that, sir, he's not saying that this is what he does out on the street. This is something that he does that demonstrates his martial skill. Well, he shouldn't be doing that then because it's not real. Well, wait a minute. One doctor that operates on the brain doesn't mean that he's less legit than the guy that operates on the heart. They're two different skill sets, right? So I can take your skill sets and what I've seen and say, how can I still apply that? The eye-hand coordination, that's needed for reality and for sport. So I was able to look at these things and dissect what could help me enhance myself and my students as martial artists and reality life skill artists, to be able to bring those together and say it's all working together towards a common goal, instead of always looking at each other and picking what we do apart and always having something of critique, a negative critique to say, instead of words of praise. So I kind of switched that around in my school and looked at everyone, yourself, Jody Tension, Ross Levine, Justin Ortiz, Jules now Ortiz as well, and bringing these guys in and saying, how can I take the best in the world and take those parts and put it into my program and utilize that and make myself and my students better. And I appreciate you and all the people I mentioned, and Carlos Turney as well, for being so open to come in and do those things for me and allow me to pick their brains.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I've always admired about you, since I think the first time I taught at your school, I was maybe 15 or 16 years old. And, as a 15 or 16-year-old, as a sport karate specialist, I've dealt with the social media bullying, if you will, forever, right, about he's a cheerleader. What happens if I pull my gun on him, right?
Correct.
I've had to deal with those comments forever. And that's one thing where it's one of those issues where it seems like in the martial arts community, so many people are on one side of the fence or the other. You either like sport karate or you don't like it and you think it's all fake. And you're someone who obviously embraces the practicality of martial arts, and that's the priority of your teaching and of your training is the practicality of the martial arts. But you're also someone that understands the benefits of using sport karate in your school from a business perspective. You mentioned some of the martial arts benefits as well, and that's something that we're going to get into later. So now that our martial arts audience, who's a martial arts family, thanks to our platform through Black Belt Magazine, has a little bit better perspective on your martial arts background and how you see the martial arts world. Now we're gonna step into the real world, if you will, the bigger real world than just the martial arts world. And so just to address these issues, I want to start by just asking, on a personal level, how have your feelings been over the past couple of weeks, over the past months? Just share your experience and the world today and how you see it.
Let me first say, because I know there's some Black people that are going to be watching this, I'm going to offend them. I know there's some white people that's going to be watching, I'm going to offend you. The one thing that I believe in is to thine own self be true, right? So I'm not going to sway things or hold things back on the premise of I don't want this person to get mad at me or that person. I don't really care. So the people at home, if I offend you, oh well. I'm just telling you my story and the things that I've gone through. I personally believe over the last years that this has been happening. As I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday, to me, it's nothing new. We've experienced this. When I say we, I mean people in the Black culture, and let me even say the Hispanic culture as well. We've experienced this type of brutality, neglect even. And the reason I say neglect is one person can be brutal to me and another person standing in the pack watching it, doing nothing, they're neglectful. Because they had the power to intervene in some way, somehow. But many times when I was growing up, they were the cheerleaders. So they would stand beside and cheer on that at the time was the white person or the white audience, the white police officer doing these things to the Black person, and they would sit there and kind of encourage it. So the neglect is just as harmful as the person who is inflicting the direct physical pain. Now, with that being said, I'm not a Black leader. When people call me and say, what do you think of Al Sharpton, or what do you think of Louis Farrakhan, or what, and I can go down the list. And they say these Black leaders are saying these things. First, you got to understand, again, this is Isaac's perspective. I didn't vote for them to be a leader for me in anything. So just because you hear one person tell you what the Black community is feeling, don't feel as if that's everyone in the Black community, because many times the people that are speaking this are not about uplifting or bringing light to a situation. They're about uplifting and bringing light to themselves, right? And so they get out there and they preach these words that infuriate people, but the one that's getting on the news all the time is that person that's doing all that speaking. Sometimes along the line, that Black leader stops being more about the issue and starts making it about self, okay? And so that's gonna tick off some of my Black friends I have. Man, I don't believe you said those people. Look, I'm not talking down about them. I'm just saying, don't come to me and say, when did you guys feel this way? Well, first, when do you mean you guys? I'm an individual, just like Jackson Rudolph is an individual. I am not gonna say all white people are the devil, because it's not true. All is an all-inclusive word. I don't like using all or every time, or, you know, those are words that are all-inclusive, meaning there is 100% of the people that's there, and that's just not true. My experience is, yes, I was a police officer. Before I was a police officer, I've been pulled over for DWB, driving while Black. I've been pulled over for having a white girlfriend in the car, being pulled over with that cop pulling a white girlfriend out, telling her she shouldn't be with me, while another white officer is telling me I better not get her pregnant. I better not spend time with her. I better watch where I drive in this town with the white woman in my car. So for people to say that the discrimination doesn't exist, or how could this happen, I lived it. I don't blame others that don't understand it. It is hard to understand something you have not personally done. Here's an example for the sport karate people. When I met you, blown away. When you came to my school, blown away, not just with your ability, but how you taught. But I still had a roadblock. And that roadblock was, how can you help make my students better by doing Skype lessons? So it took me a while to jump on board with doing Skype lessons, because I never had the experience of someone teaching me that way and making me better. So I couldn't understand how you could say, oh, Master C, trust me, they're going to get better. I trusted you, but I didn't take that step for quite some time, because I didn't understand it, right? So for someone that's not Black to say, when you get stopped walking down the street, Isaac, it's not a Black thing. He stopped a white person also. I understand them saying that, because I know they can't understand that this is not my first time being pulled over, being Black in a white neighborhood. You know, so a lot of times people in my race get a little angry when we hear that you guys don't understand. And I say, look, your perception is based upon three things: experience, exposure, education. When someone doesn't like me, it's not maybe me in particular, but they had an experience with a Black person back in the day. So their exposure led them to believe that all Black people walking down the street towards you, you need to cross the street or hold on to your purse. What my job now is to educate them that not everyone that looks that way is going to do that negative thing that they have experienced in their past. So I have to give them a new experience by educating them to that fact. But as we all know, for people that teach reality-based arts, it's harder for me to teach someone that has already been abused than it is to give me someone that has never been abused and walks into my school. Give me an abused person and I just reach out to shake her hand or his hand and they can flinch because they've had a negative experience. So before I can progress them forward, I have to go back to that experience they had and make that come to a point of resolution and then build them back up to move forward. It's the same thing with everything that's going on with the Black and white community, or the Black and the blue. You know, am I torn? People say, are you torn between the Black and the blue? Look, I'm not anti-cop. Some of my best friends are still cops now on departments that I used to be on. But I also believe in accountability. And as I told the people on the police department here, they have to take some accountability for the separation of the community. And why? Because we say things like the blue, respect the blue. Well, what have you done? You've taken the police officers now and you put them in a separate category, yet that same police officer lives right next to me in the community. But they've created this gap by saying, we're the blue, this is the community. And then when something happens, they say, oh, we're all one. Well, wait a minute, you can't have it one day saying that you're the blue, and the next minute saying you're the community. You built up a wall that then you get upset that we in the community then recognize during the time of trial or tribulation. I'm hoping all that makes sense and I'm not just rambling on. So we got to kind of see, you know, with me, when I got pulled over, and one was pretty recent with my sons in the car, I was driving through a neighborhood at night coming back from the grocery store. I guess we looked like we didn't belong there. The police officer pulled me over. When I asked him why, of course, he gave me the, when he got to my window, he gave me the same thing. Give me your driver's license, proof of insurance, registration. Before I do anything with my kids in the backyard, in my back seat, I tell him that my registration and insurance is in my glove compartment. Are you authorizing me to reach over to that glove compartment? Well, when I talk to a friend of mine who is white, he's like, what? We just reach for it. We can't do that. That's something that he couldn't understand. I have to articulate every single move that I'm going to do with that police officer, because it only takes one movement for him to perceive that there's a threat. And it's just the world that you may make that same move and they see no threat with that at all. But me reaching over there without making sure he's okay with it can cost me my life or the life of my kids. Well, after he took my registration, ran it, or took my license, ran it, I had no warrants, no wants. Then he was letting me go with the verbal warning. Well, what did he say he pulled me over for? He said that my taillight wasn't working. So at the conclusion of the traffic stop, I said, sir, are we done? And he says, yes, you can go home. Great. And I said, if you could back away from my door and go towards your cruiser. He started to do so, and I opened up my door, and he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to check my taillight. He says, well, you made us have a faulty cruise or a faulty fuse. It may be working now. So what did that tell me before I even got to the back of my car? My light was working. I got back there, looked at it, of course, nothing was going on. I'm heated. My sons are heated. I have to go back to the car and know that at the traffic stop is not the time to fight or argue, because he's going to have a gang of many that comes in that cruiser that only knows a police officer is yelling for help. When they all get there, they just know that they have to subdue anyone that's there. They don't know the backstory. They don't have the time for the backstory. They just hear an officer needs assistance. Everybody goes code 3, light siren, they come on, and the number one thing is put the suspect down. So if I would have argued and fought with him then, it would have been a negative outcome for me. I could have taken out the officer, but when the other officers come, I'm going to lose that battle. So I had to get back into my car and make sure my kids understood at the stop, whether it's in the vehicle or however the officer stops you, that's not the time to argue. You have to wait, take that to court, or call the internal affairs, or call the desk sergeant or the district sergeant or the precinct sergeant, and you make the complaint starting there. But don't do it at the traffic stop, because that we're already looked at as being a threat. I'm a semi-muscular guy, but I'm short. So as soon as they see me, they're like, he's a threat, before they even know who I am. We have to acknowledge that fact, and then we have to do what we can to keep the aggression level low, because they're already approaching us with an aggression level higher. And that's just one of the numerous stories of me being stopped, either being pulled over in a vehicle, or with me carrying Cokes as an elementary kid, saving up all my nickels and dimes so I could buy a whole bunch of sodas to give to my friends from this little before your time, but you used to actually have these little bottles, and you would actually put coins inside of them. You get these bottles, and I had like 6 or 7 of them, and I was going back home, and I was going to hand them out to some of my friends, and a police officer stopped me and asked me, what am I doing with all those? And I told him I saved up my money, and he says, you don't need those. And he took them, got him his cruiser, and drove away. So that type of thing happening in our cities helps us as little Black boys, Hispanic boys growing up to already have a distrust and dislike for the police officers. So then we wonder, why do these things happen when we get pulled over or a picture of a little abuse happening? They shouldn't have rioted. Okay, well, in the 60s, they didn't riot. They had protest. The violence then was okay, as Bull Connor and the rest down there would send in the dogs and the hoses with the sand coming through and beating people with their clubs. That violence was okay because it was police officer white on black. When it switches now, decades and decades later, and we see the protest hasn't worked, and now we're frustrated, and the protest becomes a riot, then they say, how can you be so violent? Well, wait a minute. Are you scared of us doing the violence that you taught us through our history? So now that it is us on the other side doing the violence, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're doing that. Have you forgotten your history? I don't think that when you got here, the Native Americans gave you the land. I think you killed a lot of Native Americans and took their land. I think when you went over to the Caribbean and then to Africa, we didn't raise our hands and say, can you please take us? I think you took us, beat us, brought us here, robbed us of our history so that we feel lost, so we would have to assimilate into the culture that you wanted us to have. So we all know, especially those in the military, what I want to do when I want to turn somebody is I want to separate them from the community that they grew up in. I want them to get to know me more and my way of doing things. Well, to do that, that means I got to separate them from what they used to know. If you don't believe that, why do you think the CIA put so much money into going to all these countries to try to indoctrinate the kids? Why do you think our military puts so much money in the kids age 16 to 25? You're going to be the doctor. My brain's not fully developed at that time. It's easy for you to take a 16 to 25-year-old kid and tell him when these bullets are coming down and I want you to go up that ridge, go for it. Well, at age 50, when you bark at me those orders, I'm going to look at you and say, how about you go? I'm staying right here. It's easier to mold the mind of the young to get them willing to do what you wanted them to do. So how does that equate to the black and white now? Well, we have such movements like Black Lives Matter. I'm not for it or against it. Some people hate it. I think the message has gotten so skewed that people don't know what is it for or what is it against. My opinion, as just one black man, by saying Black Lives Matter, it's not saying that white lives don't. It's just saying we're tired. A friend had said to me, but Isaac, you know, there's more white people that are killed by cops each year than black. True. Then how can you guys be more upset? Because you're not putting it in its proper context. The Washington Post keeps a list, a database of all the police killings. Well, people would say, well, so does the FBI. You're right, but the FBI acknowledges the fact that theirs is incomplete. Why? Because it's not mandatory for police officers or police departments to report those offenses, those deaths, those shootings to the FBI. Only about 40% of police departments do that. The Washington Post, and I'm not saying I'm for or against the Washington Post, they actually dig deeper and they went and grabbed all this information and they keep a rolling tally. You can go on the Washington Post page and research it. They keep a rolling tally of all the things that are happening. Well, black shot and killed 1,299 people. White, 2,478. So you should be upset. There's more people that are white being shot and killed by cops. But then you have to look into this, that is 13, oh, hold on, how do they have this here? There's 197 million white people. You have 2,478 killed by police officers. There's 42 million black, 1,299. That means there's a higher rate of blacks being killed than white. Hispanics, same thing, 904 killed. There's 39 million. There's a higher percentage or likelihood of you being black or Hispanic and being shot and killed by the police than it is our white counterparts. Does that mean that white people are prejudiced? Everybody's prejudiced. Does it mean they're racist? Not all. I'm prejudiced against some things. I hate grapefruit. I'm prejudiced against grapefruit, right? Everybody has something they don't like. How you choose to treat, act, and react to that thing that you don't like or that person you don't like, that is going to dictate your integrity, your character. Police officers, in my opinion, many are making the conscious choice to do the wrong thing. Floyd, Mr. Floyd, was he a good person? Everybody knows his history now, the things that he did, his criminal past. But those things in his criminal past does not equate to the moment in which he was killed. They're not together. That it doesn't happen that way. When they were called to the scene, they were told about a forgery, $20 bill. They didn't even know it was Mr. Floyd yet. So people can't tell to me, as they've tried to say, well, they had history about him before they got there. No, they had no idea who this individual was. Now, if I would have known and I get a call to the scene as a former police officer and it tells me, Jackson Rudolph is on scene, they're going to dispatch, depending upon what department you're with, will already have your information on my scene to show me that you have an assault in the 2nd or 3rd degree, that you carried a weapon in the past, that you have resisting arrest, you have assault on a police officer. So yeah, before I even get to the scene, I'm going to raise my level of awareness to address what I'm hearing or reading on that screen. These officers didn't have that. They didn't have that foreknowledge. Purposely, knee on the neck, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Ego. What does that mean? Edging God out. At that time, that badge made him God. We used to call it, when I was a cop, we used to call it the Superman syndrome, where we get guys that, I use better words, punks in real world, that would run from a fight in the real world. Now they have a badge, they make themselves Superman. Anyone that's ever been a cop had somebody in the academy with you that you looked at them and said, that's the guy. That particular individual, and I'm not even going to say that officer's name, he doesn't even deserve to be even mentioned by name. He made the conscious choice to leave his knee on this gentleman's neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. What was that, 5 seconds I just paused? It seemed like a long time. 8 minutes, 46 seconds, with people saying you're killing him. At some time, he made the conscious choice in his mind, I'm not going to allow these bystanders to tell me to remove my knee. I am in authority. At some time, he made that conscious choice that I'm not listening to them. Matter of fact, I'm going to show them how apathetic I am. My hands are going in my pocket. That's a conscious choice. That's why I believe he should have been, and he is, charged. The others, you know, we can debate, okay, the other guys, they were rookies. Hey, you know what? In the academy, and most academies now, they teach you to report other officers doing anything that you see it being wrong. Any of those officers could have got on the radio. I don't care that they were still in the FTO program. For people who don't understand, FTO and PTO, field training officer or patrol training officer, that's what the gentleman was, or the officer was, who had his knee on the neck of Mr. Floyd. He was a training officer. Those guys that are in the FTO program or PTO program means they just graduated the academy. Now they're riding with a police officer who has their fate in their hands. You can get fired for any reason within your first year while you're still on probation. So those guys could have been fearful that if I tell him to get off of him, I could lose my job. When you become a police officer, you're taking this oath to serve and protect your community. They made the choice that their job was more important than that life. They're complicit. We can debate about that all you wish, guys. As I said when I first started, to thine own self be true. I'm the same person on this thing with you now as I am when you come to my house, right? I don't change who I am, and I say the same things to my students. Who have you offended today? And if they say no one, I'm like, how's it feel to waste a day of your life? I offend someone every single day. Why? Because I'm being true to who I am. I like vanilla ice cream. You like chocolate. You may be offended. Well, I'm not going to change that, right? If you're always being true to yourself, someone's going to be offended. So the words that I'm saying here to people, man, it sounds like he's against police officers. How? I'm not against police officers at all, but I do believe they need to be accountable for the decisions that they make, and there shouldn't be any type of blanket immunity. In the same token, hear me, my Black brothers and sisters, you are accountable for the situations that you put yourself in. If a police officer tells you not to move, don't move. If he says, show me your hands, show him your hands. If he says, don't put your hands behind your back, guess what you don't do? Don't put them behind your back. Now, all the time, does that mean you're going to go home safely? No. But puffing up, yelling, screaming, cursing, swinging your hands around as a Black police officer, I'm going to put you down. Understand, when I say I'm going to put you down, I don't mean I'm going to discharge my firearm, but I'm going home this night. I'm going to put my hands on you. I'm going to put you down to the ground, and I'm going to cuff you for my own safety. Why? Because all of this to go on, all of them police officers now that go to work have one thing on their mind when they arrive at work. You know what that is? I'm going home after my shift. So why elevate their awareness level, their aggression level? Because remember, they just want to get done with their shift and go home just like you. So when you put this up, well, he was just trying to punch at him. Why did he have to pull out his nightstick? There's several PR-24 ASP, some places still use nunchucks. But why would you do that? Look, we're not in this to make this a fair fight. Police officers aren't in this to make this a fair fight. Police officers, a lot of them cannot fight, guys. Newsflash, they're not all black belt martial artists. Newsflash. So they get taught a certain amount of skills during the academy. Then they go out on the street and they have to try to put somebody down with these skills. When I say put somebody down, that means usually we put them in a prone position on their stomach so we can get their hands behind their back and cuff them. That's usually where you want to be. But if you haven't really practiced, we all know you can be a black belt and a martial artist and then never do martial arts again for 5 years, try to do that roundhouse kick, you're going to pull a muscle or tear a muscle, right? You have to stay proficient. A lot of officers after the academy, they don't stay proficient. Why? Because in the accredited department, you'll have in-service training every year. But most of the officers go to the in-service training like this. We're just there, so it's documented that we took it, so we can get back out on the street. So do they really have a vested interest in really making themselves better? No. People, martial artists, you guys out here that are writing saying that they should do BJJ, they should do Muay Thai. Look, get real. We live in a society that sues everyone for everything. If you teach any particular art outside of what we use, I keep saying we, the department that I was on uses what's called FBI standard, meaning they teach what the FBI tells them to. Why? Because when they get sued, they can always revert back to who? The FBI. Well, we let Jackson Rudolph come in and teach us all these great techniques. We go out there and we break a guy's neck or we break the guy's arm. The department's going to get sued. Is Jackson Rudolph going to back the department for that $1 million? No. Is the Gracie Academy? No. Oh, did he just mention it? Look, I'm not against Gracie Academy, anybody else that's out there. But I'm saying a lot of times we're saying, let's go ahead and give this to these police departments or these police officers. And then the next thing we want to do is argue with our city about why we need to increase our taxes. If I have to take this in-service training, which is handcuffing, resisting arrest techniques, arrest control techniques, PR-24 or ASP or nunchuck training. And then there's many others like interviewing techniques, felony stops. These things you still have to stay proficient in. To now add on and say, I now have to make this guy a martial artist. That means you're going to take cops off of where? The street. To be more into in-service training. So now the chiefs need to go to the city council and the mayor to say, we need more who? Cops. Why? Because we're giving them so much training, they're not out on the street. Well, I can't believe they're raising my taxes. Right? So we never take those things in consideration. So to get back to it, I'm sorry I'm running on at the mouth here. I'm just passionate about this whole thing. Officers need more training, absolutely, but we cannot ask our officers to be a psychologist, to be a paramedic, to be a mental health professional, to be a marriage counselor, to be a driving instructor, to be a martial artist. These are all the things and more that we're asking patrol officers to do for what, $35,000 to $50,000 a year? So then if we want these professionals, we have to start paying them more professional wage, which means our taxes have to go up, but wow, we don't want to deal with that. So then we're getting people like me that come straight out the military that we're taught when there's a threat and range rounds are coming down, what do? We turn the rounds and then we wonder why we have the highest amount of shootings from police officers than any other place in the civilized world. But yet we say that we're the top, we're the USA. But then we have to address these things and say, what can we do better? Which means we have to put the mirror in front of our own face.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for that incredible testimony. I found that incredibly powerful, from your personal stories and experiences to your numbers and analysis. You were very, very well prepared to speak on this topic, and it's very clear how professional and how passionate you are about this topic. And so thank you for that, and I hope that our viewers can appreciate the amount of preparation and time that you put into, and the amount of care that you put into that response, and being able to really educate so many of us, because that's something that in this time I find myself wanting, is just to be educated, to learn what we can do better. And I mean, we as an entire community of humans, not any specific group. What can we as a community of human beings do better? And on that note, kind of moving more specifically to the martial arts, you walk into a dojo or a dojang or any martial arts school, we teach, respect and courtesy. And we teach these tenets about, that all humans are equal and there shouldn't be any social class differences or race differences in a martial arts school. So in your eyes, what can the martial arts community, the martial arts industry, what can we do as a family, as a group of people to help this movement on a scale even bigger than just within the martial arts? What can martial arts do better? How can we contribute because of what we teach?
First, we have to be honest. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in the martial arts. I have known school owners, martial arts instructors, that have the Confederate flag on their car, flying from the back of their motorcycles, somewhere inside their school, some very visible inside their school. I have been around other races speaking another language that have used derogatory names for Black people, to then have a friend of mine who speaks that language come to me and say we need to go because this particular people that were speaking a different language were speaking derogatory things about Black people. We have to understand that the martial arts community, the police community, are all made up of people, individual people that have their own perceptions, prejudice, feelings, and many of them can use their power as a martial artist to still suppress someone else, right? We have to be honest with this. Years ago, and in my town, there was a martial arts instructor that was sexually assaulting kids at their parents' night out, or still having sleepovers at their school. All over the news. Olympic athlete, was at the U.S. Training Center. Wow, does that make him exempt from this? No. Martial arts community, we have to do better by calling each other out and saying, you smile in my face when I'm giving you that check, but then you're calling me out of my name when you leave your school. You're living a life contrary than what you're trying to project. How many times have we heard about martial arts instructors sleeping with their students? Wow, Isaac, don't bring that stuff. Wait a minute, that's the hypocrisy that we have. And a lot of times we know this is going on and we say nothing. We need to hold each other accountable. I do that so much so, some of my friends are like, man, you don't care if you piss somebody off, they don't like you. You're right, I don't care. Because if you start caring too much about people outside of your circle telling you your own value, then you'll never be valuable at all. Because your worth, you're letting me dictated from people that don't pay your bills and will not be by your deathbed when that time comes. So I don't care. Is there racism in the martial arts? Oh my goodness, yes. And it's been here forever. Will it go away? Will it ever go away in society? Can it get better? Absolutely. But are there things that we need to do to take care of this? Yes. I applaud Mr. Mesker. When all this came to light, the me and Johnny Tension had some things written on social media, and it kind of blew up, and there was all these threads. I put in there when things started getting a little heated, I personally mentioned Mike Mesker's name and said, guys, no, let's not protest this place or go to this place. Let's not do that. Let's let Mr. Mesker get involved with this. And if he's not the one to speak with, he'll know who to guide this to. Well, the next day, my phone rings. Guess who it is? Mr. Mesker. Taking time out of his busy schedule, we spoke well over an hour. And what he did, what's important, is he listened. I don't expect the people in the white community to fix a problem that we perceive in the Black community. But I do expect you to listen so you can try to understand, so we're not debating with the intent to win, we're discussing with the intent to resolve. And that's not happening. We are more, well, this guy deserved to be killed, and did you know he did this in his past? And like, wait a minute. We're talking about the brutality that's going on for an individual at the moment. What he did preceding that means nothing. So we have to look at that in the martial arts and say, why have there been so many Black and Hispanic martial artists, but so few that reach the ranks of master and grandmaster? Who's doing the promoting? Who's not doing the promoting? Well, Isaac, you know, I have 1,000 people in my school that have been Black belts. More power to you. How many of those are Black? Well, I've only had like 500 Black people come, so I only have one that's a Black. Well, how many white have you had come? Oh, I've had about 1,000. Wait, you have 1,000 come and you have 1,000 Black belts? Wow, you got a lot of people. But do you not see the discrepancy? For too long in the martial arts, Black people have been seen as a commodity based upon their athleticism. Let's have them teach a seminar at the Super Show because they're awesome at this. Let's have them do a demonstration at a community event because they're awesome at this. But then when it got to business affairs, how often do you see a Black school owner teaching about how to have a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 or more a month school? I can tell you, I could name, and I'm not going to put their names out there, but I can name Black school owners that have very successful schools. But I haven't seen them being asked that I know of, and they have told me that they haven't been asked to go ahead and speak on those issues. Why? Well, he's too brash in what he says. He's too forward in what he says. Are we creating more reasons to not give that opportunity than we're validating the reason for them to have that opportunity? We have the knowledge. Why isn't it being there? Well, I don't think that's racism. How many more numbers do you need to see before it validates that there's some reason that this isn't being done? Well, after having this conversation with Mr. Mesker, what happens next? Mike Dillard Jr. calls, boom. Nice, we're on the phone, hours again, writing back and forth hours, and he says to me, what can I do to help? Now we're getting a discussion. It's not going to please everyone, and I think in a way that what some of my friends are saying is right. Isaac, are these companies that own Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's, are they doing the right thing, or are they doing the right thing to protect their revenue? There's a difference as to why people are doing the things that they're doing now. I can't read the mind of Mr. Mesker and Mr. Dillard, but what I can see is they're taking a step forward and saying, what can we do, instead of justifying what has not been done. Mr. Dillard has given me his word that we're going to work on an article that we're going to do a reflection back on martial arts, Black people in the martial arts from the 60s, 70s and on that have never gotten their due in Black Belt magazine. I mean, okay, we had Jim Kelly. Okay. Oh, maybe it was Cecil Pill was on there. I don't know. Maybe we had a few, But like I had mentioned to Mr. Metzger and Mr. Dillard, it is easy to see the speck of pepper and a mound of salt. So, and what I mean by that, take a big mound of salt and sprinkle a few on there, and then it's easy to say, see, we did this. See, we did that. And then we're supposed to say, be happy about what you got. That's like inviting me to your house for dinner. Let me inside the door, but not let me eat at the table. We're tired of that. So Mr. Dillard has said to me, Isaac, yeah, I'm willing to do that, or reflections of, that we're going to research back and find people like Grandmaster McMurray, Jim McMurray, that was a member of 5th Special Forces Group in Vietnam, that had to use his martial arts skills. And he started with Ishinru and then went into Hapkido and Taekwondo and trained and trained and trained. And out in the jungle, then come back to his camp, and the camp have to be separated. Green Berets are separated. Why? Because some are white and some are black. Welcome to the reality of the world. Comes back to the United States and still has to fight over martial arts and getting his due as a martial artist. Why? Because he's black. Shelton Moreland, another one. I mean, I could go on and on. George Funny. People may not know about Master George Funny. He's older right now, Grandmaster, battling health issues. But this man was a LRP, long-range reconnaissance patrol in Vietnam, meaning you go out on your own, and it's your sole responsibility to make your way back. You know if your martial arts works when your life depends on it. Nothing's been written about these guys. FBI agent, Vietnam Marine, 9th degree black belt in Hapkido. These guys that I know that are all out there are saying, how come nothing's written about me? Well, now we're going to have that opportunity to reflect back and say, how are these people now influenced me, the next generation, and try to give them the honor that they never received back then, the recognition that they never received back then, and set, frankly, set the record straight on some of these things. There's great martial artists from back in the day that we speak of. Kevin Thompson. I mean, how can you ever dispute that man's greatness? I don't think, off top of my head, I can't think of one person that would ever dispute, black, white, Asian. If you do dispute it, something's wrong with you, period. If I offended you, good. Because to me, you cannot dispute this man's ability, right? He's been recognized, but the problem is everybody that's black, it's like we have to hit this high mark to be recognized, where others that are white maybe don't need to have as much, but they've had article. Stephen Hayes, great martial artist, a lot of articles about ninjutsu. Who was the black martial artist about ninjutsu that brought ninjutsu to the United States? Somebody out there said his name, Ronald Duncan. How many people know that? His son, a few select of us. He doesn't get his due. Why? Well, we have to be recognizing of that yes, race was involved. I wrote Black Belt Magazine decades ago as a kid, because I used to love that magazine. And I noticed when I was a kid, how come there's never any black people featured in this? I wrote them, got no reply. Many of my black friends said the same thing. Now you guys have the power, and thank you, Mike Dillard, for saying we're going to correct that. That shows me, whatever the motivation may be, revenue, I don't know. Enlightenment, I hope. But at least it's showing me that you're taking the step forward to try to rectify and resolve, instead of the intent to defend the way it's been, because I don't care about the way it's been. I don't care. You're going to be a brain surgeon. Please, when you become a brain surgeon, don't do surgery on someone the way it was done in 1960. Please don't do that. Right? Because you're going to have more knowledge now, so why be bound to the way something was back then, strictly because it's tradition? I heard someone say that the shot that killed Abraham Lincoln today, he would have lived. Wow. We have to build these things up to know that racism is there. We need to call it out, and by calling it out, it'll force that person to adjust, but it'll push him out of the picture.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for that. I mean, hitting on the Black Belt Magazine topic, I mean, that's one thing that I've been very proud to be a part of the Black Belt Magazine team now, and hearing some of those conversations and knowing that there is an active effort to be more inclusive, to encourage diversity, and to reach a level of more racial equality in the martial arts. And I hear exactly what you're saying. You know, when you reference Kevin Thompson in the sport karate community, he is the greatest martial artist that the sport karate community has ever produced.
I agree.
Some of the viewers may wonder why my lighting is a little bit dark here. Well, it's because I'm in the historic Babcock's Karate Studio, and over there to my left, out of the frame, sitting above, you know, pictures of grandmasters and things like that, is an autographed pair of Kevin Thompson's gloves with the Rolex that he won at the Bluegrass Nationals, right? And so that just shows you the impact that man had on all of martial arts as someone who is a sport karate athlete. Raymond Daniels, widely considered
Oh my goodness,
the greatest fighter of all time, another prominent Black martial artist. Forget Black martial artist, just a prominent great martial artist, right? Look at arguably the two best heavyweights in the world right now competing in sport karate, Cameron Dawson and Avery Plowden, right? So there's these notable figures of today and of the past that deserve to have their stories told. And I love what you're doing and your willingness to be included in that effort, to even go back all the way into the 60s in martial arts history in general, and bring some of these great, forget what color they were, these great martial artists, these great athletes, and bring them to the forefront so that they get the exposure that they deserve. And so,
now, can I just say one thing I want to bring up? And these are from people I personally know, so he's not going to be offended. I don't know how long ago I started a relationship with Troy Dorsey. For those that don't know, Troy Dorsey, Taekwondo stylist, kickboxing world champion, and I believe was IBF world boxing champion. The man is amazing. He and I have formed a friendship relationship where we've never seen each other well, I think we've seen each other face to face once at maybe the Super Show. But we write each other, I'll text him, or he'll just send me a text, words of encouragement, that type of thing. What I like about him, and the reason I bring him up, is we talk about the Troy Dorsey of back then. And if you guys don't know his story, talk to him. He's very open and honest about the demons that he's overcome in his life, including racism, of how he felt and the words he said about Black people. But I have respect for him now. Why? Because he admitted where he's been, and he's demonstrated where he is. I don't need you to smile in my face to then say the N-word behind my back. I will respect you more to stand here in front of me and tell me how you feel, call me the N-word. I'm gonna beat you down, but I'll respect you as I beat you down. But in today's world, we have gotten to be keyboard warriors, and we wanna speak all these negative things about each other because the person's not in front of us. Troy Dorsey has shown me, Isaac, I did all these things, man, and I turned myself over to the Lord, and I'm like, wow, listen to your testimony. I'm glad he was who he was, because he gives a great demonstration of who he is now. So my challenge to everyone out there that's watching this is, who are you? Really, who are you? Are you someone that's speaking up more about your distaste and your hatred for the riots than you are to the many things that happened to cultivate it, that brought these riots to happen? Who are you? Are you someone who would suppress somebody getting a belt because they're Black and you just think they should work better? So you go to that old saying that I was raised on: when you're Black, if you want to be successful, you can't be as good as your white counterpart. You have to be better than. When is that going to change? Who are you? Are you someone that has said to someone, no, you may be my friend, but you're not going to talk about that person or say those words around me? Because if you're the person that just laughs it off, I know who you are. You don't have to tell me, because you've demonstrated it. Each one of us in our lives, we have a choice. We can be an impression or we can be an impact. An impression is a momentary thing that happens in someone's life that's going to fade away. I press my finger, it's red, oh, it's white, oh, it's getting back red again. That's a momentary impression. I refuse to be that. A meteor hit the United States or the moon or the world many, many centuries, thousands of years ago. That meteor may not still be around, but what is there? That crater. That impact is still felt long after the thing that caused it was there. I choose to be that impact. And a lot of times being that impact means that there's going to be destruction. Martin Luther King, peaceful man, but he destroyed the way that people lived down south back in those days. There's destruction. The meteors that hit here in the moon, destruction. Unfortunately, with the riots that occurred, there was destruction. I'm not going to get into that today. I think it's idiotic to destroy things within your own community, destroy your own houses. But as one person said to me, Isaac, remember, they're tearing down these stores, right? You're from the hood. A lot of the stores aren't owned by us. Go to Black communities. The convenience store down on the corner, go inside, see who owns it. Very rare it's owned by a Black person. But the money's there, so you open it up in the community to have a place in the hood to make your revenue, but those same owners very seldomly give back to that same neighborhood that they're getting all their money from. We have to look at this as a community and say, as was said to me many years ago, and I'm not stealing this, this is a martial arts term, each one, teach one, reach one. Each one, teach one to Jackson Rudolph. It's your job now to reach one. Then that person repeats that over and over, and we start to make an impact then, versus it just stopping with you and saying, I understand what you're doing. Your understanding doesn't help anything. Your action will. And that's where we need to collectively get together and start speaking, discussing, resolving, implementing, and finishing.
Sir.
Old military term. One without each of those steps, guys, you're just dreamers. I don't care about dreamers. Hey, I respect Martin Luther King. I used to have all his albums when I was growing up, to listen to all his speeches in my room. I respect it, but the one thing that I differ on is when he says, I have a dream. Look, I don't care about your dream. Dreamers only dream. I think it would have been better titled, I have a goal, because he took steps to achieve. You want to be a brain surgeon or neurosurgeon. I'm sorry, I'm not an intelligent guy. I'm not sure if there's a difference. But wanting's not enough. You had to go to school. You had to graduate close to the top of your class. You still have to apply to go to these other schools, which is very challenging. Wanting is not enough. Don't tell me what you want. Show me that you need it, like you need your next breath. And that's what we need to do in the community to bring everybody back together. We all need to have those discussions and to resolve and to implement and to finish.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Once again, I feel like a broken record, but thank you. The number one thing that I feel is gratitude for you sharing that with us and you being as passionate as you are and sharing that information. And I really do hope that, like you're saying, everybody listening to this does take action and chooses to set that goal and work towards achieving that goal. You know, and that's prevalent not only for the discussion of the racial inequalities that we've seen in our society now, but as you mentioned, I mean, that's something that you can apply to any aspect of life, which is also very powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And now I do want to go ahead and, you know, as we near kind of the end of the show, I do want to share two admittedly less important topics, but, you know, to give a holistic approach to this martial arts podcast, right? So we're also dealing with, you know, I feel like it's so easy to forget about this other crisis that the world is dealing with right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. All of this with the racial injustices and inequalities that has been brought to the forefront. And we're still at the same time dealing with this other major crisis with public health, with COVID-19. I know that your school has recently in the state of Colorado been able to come back and resume some in-person classes with some various stipulations. And I know that every state kind of has their own policies that are being implemented over time. But as a school owner consultant, and a very successful school owner at that, a lot of our audience are fellow school owners that are, you know, potentially struggling with their business and wanting to bring their school back and rise up to the levels that they were at before. Do you have any tips for those schools that are on their way back? What are some techniques that you have used on the business side and even on the teaching technique side, just because of how different it is right now? Is there any advice that you have for other school owners?
This is going to be hard for the school owners to kind of understand, because I know financially many of us are hurting right now. But here's what you need to do. Forget the money, help the people, never give up. The problem that happens now is we're thinking how to make money off of misery. And what I mean by that is go on your own Facebook page and there's all these people popping up all over telling you how to make money during the time in the COVID. So in other words, you're trying to, someone that's drowning, you're saying, here, you want some water? Stop trying to make everything about the money. The money will come if you help the people. Let them see that you are a benefit. When, as it was told to me in many years and things that I've done, features tell, benefits sell. When I tell you, oh, come and take my class because we're the best martial arts class and we're going to teach confidence and concentration and focus. What have you done to separate yourself from everybody else? Every place is saying they teach concentration, focus, respect. Everybody uses that. That is so 1970s, right? You have to be able to let these parents know that you have proactive thinking, not reactive doing. Too many people, and there's a group, I believe it was a Century group that I was in, and someone really went in on me, and I just kind of laughed at it because they were writing all about the EIDL and the Triple P and getting the money assistance from the government. And I wrote in there, I'm lost. Are you a business person or are you a hobbyist? Because if you're a business person, no matter what business you have, you should be following basic business principles. Why are you so dependent on a government handout when you should have already had a business line of credit set up? Are you a business or are you a hobbyist? Why are you now saying, is anybody doing online? How is your online? Look, I'm going to tell you guys, if you're waiting around to see if this second wave is coming, you're not going to make it through the second wave. You're being reactive. You're waiting to say, I'm going to tread water after you already swam 25 miles. I don't care how good you are treading water. After that 25-mile swim, you're tired. You're going to lock up. You're going to drown. Stop being reactive. Look, in the martial arts, we always talk about self-defense. How wrong is that? The best fight ever fought is the fight that's never fought. Why are you telling someone how to block a punch when you should have told them how to stay away from that? I'm telling you guys now, if the second wave is going to come, you should be prepared and building that now. Because when it comes, my people can say, oh, we're already set. We have to close down the school. Oh, no problem, Master C, see you online. Why? Because we have them doing it now, and we're preparing them that it's only getting better for when the second wave comes. So I don't have to go to them at that time and say, guys, we need to go back to online, because what are you telling them? You're telling them you're giving them something inferior. Guys, I can't teach you here at the school. We need to go to online because they're going to shut us in again. That even sounds negative. What are the benefits of being online? What are the benefits of having you record that? The benefit is, with us, we have instructors out on the floor that's teaching, and then we have instructors that are sitting at the screen, personally looking at what you are doing. It's a private lesson. Our online isn't something less than, it's something in addition to that brings your total performance of a martial artist up. Stop selling the negative and start teaching them the benefit of it. The feature of it is my online program. The benefit is you're getting one-on-one instruction with qualified instructors to help you achieve your goals. So we have to look at it that way instead of saying, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the second wave. Well, with that, you're not, because now you're not preparing. You're being reactive to it. Science, action is faster than what? Reaction, right? Now, I know there's guys that said, but wait, a knife was or an arrow was coming to my head and I was able to move out of the way and grab it. Okay, you can do that all you want. I'd rather be reactive, or excuse me, proactive and be behind the tree so the arrow can't hit me. If you want to stand there and see and test your timing, more power to you. But I'm saying, let's be real. What I had to learn through the years, Green Berets, they call it Special Forces, Navy SEAL teams, Marine Recon teams, SRT teams with Special Response teams, TEU, Tactical Enforcement Units, SWAT teams. I had to learn early on with them, don't teach crap and expect to come back. Okay, I remember that, because I can't go into these operators and say, let me teach you Taeguk Iljan. No, no. Is there anything wrong with Taeguk Iljan? No. But is that what they need in the real world? No. So you have to say to these things, what can I do to let my people in my school see the value of what I'm already doing? Hey, my people love my online because not only is it live, but we film it. Then we post it in a private group that they can come back and look at it forever. If you guys are one of those people that think learning martial arts online just isn't valid, you better wake up. Everybody in the United States today is a martial artist. You know why? Because of one word combined together. YouTube. I personally have fought with guys on the street that did jump kicks and roundhouse kicks and spinning kicks. As a cop, wind up finally getting these guys down and handcuffing them and like, man, that's some pretty good skills. Where did you learn the martial arts at? And guess what their reply was? YouTube. People are putting more time into training from stuff they see online than what they're doing going to your school. So if you're one of those people that think, oh, it's not valid teaching, you will be left behind. Is there still more value in coming to see me personally? Absolutely. But you can still use these tools of today to enhance someone's training. Your generation, the generations below you, my generation, we didn't have computers when we were young. As we got older and I got into high school is when we came out with what was called Wang computers. They were huge computers, right? Took up a whole room. When I got up in NORAD, which is here in Colorado Springs in the mountain where they used to have that movie that came out decades ago, I can't remember it now, where there was war games and he was playing tic-tac-toe with the computer and the computer wanted to do a nuclear war. I can't remember the name of that movie. You older guys like me will remember it. There was a floor in NORAD where the whole floor was nothing but these massive computers. Those massive computers didn't hold as much as a laptop. That's how much we've advanced. Martial arts guys, you need to advance. Stop being stuck. Look, I respect yesterday's traditions, but I train and teach for today's realities. The same thing is in business. If you're in inner city school, you brought up that I do consulting. Look, I love consulting people making $10,000 a month or less. Why? Because if you're making 40, 50,000, you don't need me. You got all those big hitters that can go ahead and help you do the same thing. I want to make an impact. 10,000 or less, let's talk about it and let's show you how it is. And let's be honest that if you're in Beverly Hills, the way that you run your school there is not the same way you're going to run your school in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. Newsflash, people, it's real. Right? You cannot have the same business principles for different locations. I cannot have, if I'm in the Bronx, New York, or the inner city of Philly, or the inner city of Baltimore, I can't put up on my window clings all these white kids and white families. Because the black people and Hispanic people walking down, they cannot relate to that. Martial arts industry, are you hearing me? Why are you trying to force me that every advertising I need to do has to have a little white kid on it? Oh, but Isaac, that's not about racism. Really? You're going to tell me that you're smart enough to make hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and then never had the clue that maybe you need to have a little color on some of these advertisements? If it's not racism, then it's ignorance. Someone somewhere in your business should have been able to look at that and said, I think we need to have somebody of color in this. It's just common business sense. Same thing with females. When are we going to start celebrating the females in the martial arts? We have outstanding females now, some on the team with you, that are outstanding.
Absolutely.
Morgan, oh my goodness. Gina, oh my goodness. Mackenzie, is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Outrageous. And I have to tell you, I'm part of the problem. My females in my school have been asking, sir, when are you going to bring out these females? And Gina Thornton, if you're listening, girl, I love you. I promise, right? Morgan, I reached out to you too through Jotty. Thank you. I promise. I want to get you guys out here. Guys that are teaching reality arts like me. If you're a Krav Maga guy, or I don't even care what the names are, you guys need to bring in these point fighters. Why? Listen, what do you see in the UFC now? The closing of the gap, these dudes have gotten fast. Where are they learning that from? Point fighters. You have to, U.S. Taekwondo. And I know a lot of Taekwondo guys. When I was growing up with the Taekwondo, the Olympic movement back in the 80s, look at that stuff. They were kicking with power, but a lot of stuff was coming from the rear leg. Now things are coming from what? The lead leg. Where did that come from? Sport karate. Look how people are now bridging that gap. How fast it's being done. Where did that come from? Sport karate. But Isaac, how does that equate over to your reality skills? If I get a point fighting school that I go to teach at, where 99% of the time they're blitzing, and then I have to show them how to do a knife technique or a gun technique and teach them totally different footwork, they're gonna get killed. Why? Because they already put hundreds of thousands of repetition in making themselves fast and closing the gap and invading. So why go in and now tell them, oh no, don't use that footwork? So what I'm telling them to do is I need you to start thinking. From where I come from, and what I did in the military and all the training I do, the first person that thinks is the first person that dies. You don't have the luxury of thinking. I can't have my mind process what to do, then have the other part of my brain tell me to do it because the other guy's already pierced my throat with his blade. I have to know to do, which comes from repetition, repetition, repetition. So you go into those sport karate places like I did with Jati School, and I say, I'm going to show you guys a knife defense that I do, but I'm going to show you how you're going to use the footwork that you're already doing and putting it into this that you guys are going to be blazing fast. Why? Because the footwork I don't have to reteach. Right? Same thing when he comes to me. I had to put my ego to a side. I had to be humble. I didn't have Jati and Ross and Justin and them come in and like, I didn't do that. I'm like, I'm going to empty my cup into a basin, not down the drain. I emptied my cup into a basin. Had Jati and all the rest of those guys fill it, including Carlos Turney, and then what did I do? I put it together. I've increased my knowledge. Somebody else comes in, I get that, I put it in, I increase my knowledge. But I let myself become humble and stop saying, since I'm a grandmaster, there's nothing you can teach me. The biggest downfall of martial arts is your own ego. There's always someone better. There's always someone that knows more. Same thing with you guys that are looking at consulting. Stop being so stuck on one way of doing things. Maybe you posted, somebody else posted, I read it, that an old saying from Danny and Santos back in 1972, I believe it was, and I don't remember exactly the words, but he had written something in there about the fallacy of instructors saying they're the only one, you should only train with me, you should not go anywhere else, and there's no validity to go train with any other instructors. Why do instructors do that? One reason: revenue. I don't want you to go and train with somebody else because that's revenue that should be staying inside my own school. Well, if your desire and your hope and your focus is revenue, then do the right things. Remove revenue, remove you from the equation. Bring in the Jackson Rudolphs to say, let me enhance your bow staff. Well, I'm an Okinawa stylist, we don't do the spinning. I bet you if you remove yourself out of the equation, he can still show you how to make that better.
Absolutely.
Same thing with my school. We're full contact guys, but we do the cheating full contact. We'll put a finger in your nose, knee you in the groin. It's all about going home, right? So I still look at what do you guys bring to me so I can close that gap fast enough to put my finger in his eye, right? So it's just removing yourself out of the equation to say, how can I make myself better so my students don't have to go out of my school to get the world's best bow staff practitioner, because I already got you. My kids don't have to go out of my school to see outstanding kickers like Justin Novello. Justin, if you listen, I'm sorry I said your name wrong, brother. One day I'm going to get that right. They can kick straight up, or Justin Ortiz that has that deep chamber like Justin does, and Justin. I don't have to say, guys, watch me. I can say, no. I want you guys to see the best of the best. And then I'll show you how guys that are broken down with 5 surgeries, bad hips and knees, then I'll show you how I do it. Years and years and years and years ago, I fought in what was called the World Police and Fire Games. A movie star was there at the World Police and Fire Games, and I won my division. And he came into me, and he said at the ceremony, Isaac, kicking somebody in the face makes as much sense as punching somebody in the foot. He said it to me right in my face. And if I told you his name and you would go and get a movie, you would find out that this dude has had like the perfect weapons ever to be able to fight. Do you see what I did there? Y'all don't pick it up, replay it, and you'll figure out who it is. And I was kind of offended and hurt, like, I'll kick you in the face. But it took me time to understand what he was saying. I wasn't ready to receive it there. I had to mature and grow in time to understand what he was saying. Space equals time. Taking my foot to kick you to the face, if my hand is only a foot away from you, shouldn't my hand, unless you build super for wireless, shouldn't my hand get to your face before your foot gets to mine? Right? So then I listened to that, and then later somebody else watered that seed. And that was Danny and Santos, when I heard him say when he was young, he would kick to the head. As he got older, he figured out ways to bring your head to his foot. And I'm like, wow, wisdom. I had to bring myself down and listen to others that have been there, done that, and then be willing for me to then implement and then finish. Too often we'll implement and we'll find a reason, well, that just didn't work for me. No. It's not that the idea or the principle that was given you didn't work. You didn't work that idea or the principle to its conclusion. You're quitting too soon. I got hit with a sidekick from Jotty. I think Jotty tried to imitate the sidekick from Ross, and I'm scared of Ross's lead sidekick is D side, right? But Jotty hit me, and I'm like, okay. And then when we were there, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, blitz again. I'm like, you must be out your mind. You just hit me with that. I ain't blitzing again. And he said, that's why you have to blitz. Like, what do you mean? He said, I know I got you. You can't let me know that I hurt you. You got to go ahead and work this again because it's a good technique. You just didn't apply it well. And I'm like, for being so dumb, you a smart dude. Right? And Johnny, I know you watch it, right? But I had to listen to those things from him and like, these things make sense. So instead of me being offended, I grew because I took my ego out and I listened to what he said and like, you know what? That blitz does work. I just did it wrong. So let me not justify my failure by pointing at someone else. Let me look at myself and like, how can I do this better? And I got the blitz down. Still not fast enough to get Ross, but still, right? So what I'm saying to all you guys out there in the sport karate world, open your minds, listen to the OGs, the guys that were back before, then listen to the new generation this here and now, put those together. I don't care what system or style you're in. Each one teach one, reach one. Take out your ego. Stop edging God out. To many of you, the God, the little g is you. You're putting yourself in your own way, which is stopping you from succeeding because you're more interested in defending where you are than being receptive to help someone take you to the next level.
Absolutely. That's excellent advice. And going back to, you know, this idea of, and this is something that I talk about with school owners often, like martial arts seems to be the only industry in which you can provide a service. And then some of those service providers tell the customers, you can't go anywhere else, right? If I go and buy a Coke, Coke can't tell me the next time I can't buy a Pepsi. You know what I'm saying? And so in order to retain students, in order to keep your people coming back and not having to go somewhere else, increase the quality of your own product. And that's exactly what you're saying. You're increasing the quality of your own product by bringing in the best in the world in various fields to do those things, right? And just one more quick little point that I want to add before we wrap up here. You beautifully explained how point fighting can be applied to real world situations and that skill of closing the distance, right?
Yes.
And one thing, and you're not the only practical based guy that's had me in to do a seminar. One thing that I always wonder, when I was younger, I wondered this. And as I got older, I started to realize it because I thought more on the industry side, right? And when I was younger, I was like, you know, this dude teaches people how to like kill people and not be killed themselves. And I'm teaching the students how to spin a bow staff, right? And sure, I'm teaching striking as well, right? And you can use striking in a self-defense situation, but chances are in a self-defense situation, you're not gonna have a bow in your hands to defend yourself with anyway, right? And so you beautifully explained how point fighting and how that part of sport karate can help, right? But you brought me in to teach bow, you've had Ross Levine teach bow, you've had nunchuck instructors in, right? You've had forms and weapons competitors come in. For you and your school specifically, who, as you've mentioned, like you focus on the practicality of the martial arts, right? What benefits do those type of sport karate athletes have? Not the point fighters, but the forms and weapons competitors, the people on the performance side. What benefits do, admittedly, guys like me have in your school, right? And just for the sport karate audience that we have on the podcast, what benefits do you see there?
In America, we typically, when we teach martial arts, or the generic name saying karate, which kind of encompasses everything, right? I know for people in Okinawa and Japan, they hate that. But when we typically say karate and all this stuff, we're thinking empty hands, right? We teach empty hands and move people up to weapons. Nate Hill, who is our head instructor for our knife and our stick guru, Nate Hill, from Blood and Bones Tactical, he made a good point to me. He says, Isaac, and if you guys haven't seen this man move a stick, it's a blur, right? But if you can stop a stick that's moving over 100 miles an hour, isn't it going to make your hand kind of seem slow? The Philippines, from what I've been instructed on, starts you with weapons and leads you to the empty hand. Because if you can stop me swinging these things, you're going to be able to do this. We just teach it the opposite. I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but what it does do is it helps you with your eye-hand coordination, and it helps you to understand movement. I have nothing against forms. I don't teach them anymore. Notice I said anymore, because in the systems that I do carry black belts in, I had to learn them. And then they would tell me, well, the bunkai is inside of the form, the kata, the pumse, the taeguk, whatever you want to call it. I understand that, but I just got to the point that, okay, if it's already inside of it, put somebody here in front of me and have them grab me and then to show me the technique, right? With the bow and the staff, I can swing that, but I'm not going to have too many people that's going to stand there in front of me while I spin that thing as fast as you do and bring that around and whip that across somebody's head. But it helps me with my eye-hand coordination that I have to know where my limbs are, because it has to receive that weapon. That translates over to when someone is punching at me. Look, I'm going to take some people off right now, but I'm not impressed when you have somebody stand in front of me and say, okay, when I tell you to, I want you to throw a reverse punch at me, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm going to do. Oh, that's easy when I tell you to punch. We've all seen it, right? Grandmaster's like, okay, throw the punch, boom. And we hold our hand out there while the person punches, kicks us 50 times, and we hold the hand out there the whole time. Then you get out on the street, you come to your dojo, your dojon, whatever it is, and your eye is busted, your jaw is broken, you got to mumble to someone the technique didn't work. Why? Because you, for 25 years, have been punching and holding your hand out there, and you found out the Pookie and them out on the street don't punch that way. We don't hold the arm out there. With a weapon, you have to know it's going to come back. How do you receive that so that you can stay engaged? That's what's missing in some type of the martial arts. We do one and done. One and done. That's not real world. Or we'll show that we'll do a technique and we'll hit a guy once and he'll go out. Look, I was in Kadena, Air Force Base in Okinawa. Right off the base, there was clubs that everybody would go to. My name was kind of known there when I was there, not a big deal, just from the military crowd of the fighting and all that good stuff on base, not getting in fights, but being in our base gym and guys would spar and they see me do this stuff. So you kind of get to know the guys that are on base that are doing your thing. We went to a club, a Marine was in there. Well, this Marine, I guess, was some boxing dude, and people, my military guy was talking me up to him. His Marine guys were talking him up to me, and both of us had too big of egos to just walk away and leave. I was a small guy. I weighed about 160. I was maybe 5'7", but I was ripped back then. And I've hit guys and had them drop. But it was because in my school, just like some of you, when your instructor grabs you and you start doing a technique, you get taught at a young age, fly through the air. Or your instructor just taps you like, oh, and you know, you have to do all that stuff. And so you're training yourself to be fake, but you do the fake so long that it actually becomes a part of who you are. This guy and I faced off, and you know, I was taught, look, hit first, hit hard, hit often. Okay, kind of like the Karate Kid type thing, right? I don't believe in self-defense unless it's the last thing. You invade my space, my awareness didn't keep you away, then I protect myself, and that means I hit first, hit hard, hit often. If I let Mike Tyson hit me first, I'm done, right? So I went ahead and hit this guy nice and clean. Guys, his head turned. He looked back at me and did this. Little blood right there. I'm telling you right now, my mind filled with doubt because every person that I hit before that dropped because I wasn't training real. What happened to me after that, he was throwing all these punches because I had learned different weapons and I learned how to, that weapon as fast as you put it out, that centrifugal force is going to whip that thing back. So as his punches were coming, I was able to go ahead and receive that without processing because I was able to use the weapons through the years that translated to someone actually bringing that back and forth at me. Same thing when people use the speed bag, it's coming back at you. It's the same type thing. So if you don't use weapons, I'm not saying don't do it, but I am telling you guys, if you don't have weapons in your school, open your mind. You don't have to be the best at it. You just have to have access to the best to teach you to do it. And Jackson is just one. Abedim and Wally, the man with his chucks and his instruction. Great Danny Etkin came to my school as well. Matt Emig has been to my school. A lot of these guys, some of them are great practitioners, but if you're like me, when they first came in, our level in our school on the weapons, the sport karate side was pretty low. So if they come up at too high of a level, which some of them did, my guys were like, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, but when they left, didn't retain any of it. You were able to come in there and look at their skill level and say, I got this. And my people have gotten 100% better, not from me, but because of me subordinating myself and saying all these stripes on my belt mean nothing. You have the knowledge, I'm the student. And again, that comes from taking ego out and seeing that there's power in submission. Power in submission. You learn the most when you learn to submit.
Sir. Awesome. That's great stuff. And thank you so much for the little bit of praise for me that you sprinkled in there. I really do appreciate that. And like I said at the beginning to our audience, Master C and I go back a long time.
Yes, sir.
In school forever. And one of the things that I respect most about him, and there's several school owners that have done this when I've come in for seminars, is he gets on the mat and he takes the seminar, right? He doesn't hide away in the office and just like watch the seminar and do business stuff, right? He's out there on the mat. He's learning because he knows that that's going to give him the tools to be able to continue helping his students after I leave. I tip my hat to his sons as well. His sons would train with me every week on Skype, and they're not just getting skills that are going to make them better, but they're asking questions about how they can teach their weapons class better. And that's something that's taking them to the next level. And for school owners, that's one thing that I inspire you to do with your instructing staff, right? Have them ask questions, not just about what it takes for them to improve their own skill level, but you want your instructors to be asking questions about how can they be better teachers? How can they be better spreaders of the martial arts, right? Because ultimately, that's what's going to bring up the quality of your school when you have instructors that are passionate about spreading their passion. And so, Master C.
Retention in your school. If you want higher retention in your school, invest in your instructors' training. It could be going to super shows or any, and I don't work for Maya. I'm just saying that's a place where you can go and learn some skills, right? Business skills. Dave Kovar, the same way. You can talk to him. There's some others that are out there as well. But in that same type venue, my retention goes up when I invest in my instructors learning from you and others. My retention goes up when my students are getting better at these weapons than me. Master C, let me show you this. And they're showing like, oh my goodness, I can't get that down. Can you help me? And they're like, oh yeah, Master C, my retention is up because they can't wait to teach Master C how to do something, right? And it demonstrates integrity because I'm not telling them that I know everything about everything. So I'm showing them the integrity that I say I have. Tying into that, all you guys that are out there, when we were told to be shut in, I kept classes going anyway. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to offend you. You have a lack of integrity. When you break the law and it's not for the intent to improve the overall society of the people, then you have a lack of integrity. So if I'm going to tell people I'm going to help build character, but they're saying my school should be shut down, but I'm going to go ahead and have you guys come in anyway, lack of integrity. If they're saying you should wear a mask, but you don't have to wear a mask in my school, lack of integrity, what is that telling that parent about what you're going to teach their child? How can you teach something that you don't demonstrate? A friend of mine said years ago, and I'm going to offend some people again, a friend of mine said to me years ago, Isaac, you know the problem with all these grandmasters? I'm like, what? They talk about all this respect and discipline that they're going to teach, but they don't have enough respect for themselves and discipline to put the fork away from their own mouth. Whoa. No, you did not just say that. And I looked at this individual, and you know who you are, and I started to think, I started pulling up all these pictures of grandmasters, and a lot of them had the same thing in common. You know what that was? Big stomach. As our ego grows, so did our stomach, because we didn't have to practice anymore. We didn't have to do, as I tell my kids, PP. That's what I tell my students. What's PP, Master C? Perfect practice. Not just practicing, perfect practice. So you can never perfect practice, Master C, but you're always striving to. So it makes you better and better and better, because you're always in pursuit of that perfect practice, right? So guys, get better by bringing people in. Let your students show you what they're learning. Get out there on the mat and admit, these are some things I don't do, but this is why you should train here with me. Why? Because other instructors are going to tell you, you never need to know what's going to happen with the knife. The probability of you being assaulted with the knife is really small. So they never teach that somebody gets stabbed. You'll never have to learn how to do a handgun disarm. The probability that happens to you is that then someone gets shot. Why not learn and teach? It's better to know and never use than be in a position where you need and you do not have. But again, it comes by submission. Bring these guys in. And guys, oh, by the way, I can't afford Jackson Rudolph. I can't afford Justin Ortiz. I can't afford, look, your price, the cost that you're paying by not bringing them in far exceeds what you're doing by bringing them in. It's called an investment. Every business must invest in itself to grow. As I was coming in, a friend told me you got to do two things to grow your business. One of two things. Invest time or invest money. Some of you want to work a part-time schedule and have a full-time income. You're wrong. Some of you say, well, I want my school to be the best, but you're not investing money to learn from the best. You're wrong. Some of you say, well, my instructor says my instructor, but your instructor never had a school that thrived, but you want to listen to that instructor on how to make your school go to the next level. You're wrong. You can have an instructor that's great in the martial arts, a black belt in the martial arts, but a white belt in business. So why are you listening to him in the business sense? Put these things together, guys. Open mind, open wallet. What does that mean? Invest in this training. That investment will give you a return. That return will help you with your revenue, and that revenue will help you with freedom. If you can put those things together, but we want freedom right now, but we don't want to do any of the others. You got to be able to put these things together to have success in your business and in your school, and as just a person to say I'm making a positive impact. Stop making everything about you and start making everything about your employees, which are our team members, and about your students. That means someone's going to be offended. If you're a school owner and you have all 5 stars on all your ratings, I would never train with you, because all that tells me is that you're a sellout. Right? McDonald's is huge, but there's people that hate McDonald's. So they're going to write down and say, I don't like McDonald's. Does that mean McDonald's is bad? No, it just means that it's so big and it's touching so many people that some people aren't going to like it. That's okay. I have had people to come to me and say, that's not the place for me. Why? Because I told them that you told me all these things about how bad your kid is. Your kid isn't bad. You're a bad parent. Boom, they leave. Don't ask me to make your child better if you're not going to see that you first got to make yourself better, because all these bad traits that you're telling about you got from somewhere. Your kids are spending 23 hours with you. Don't ask me to correct a problem that you're putting in them 23 hours in a 1-hour session. Are you willing to go ahead and say you're part of the problem? And some of the parents will say yes, and I'll accept them in. Some that say, well, no, you just don't understand. I shake hands and say there's a place up the street that'll let you go there and have no accountability. You're going to be accountable. You guys as business owners, you need to be accountable for yourself. That means make changes. If you feel comfortable, you'll never grow. Feel the pressure. Feel the discomfort. That comes with your growth. When you don't, you become irrelevant. When you become irrelevant, you become ancient. When you become ancient, you're a relic, right? You got to stay proficient in the way things are now, both new school and old school. I'm an old school taekwondo guy. I really don't like the WTF play patty cake. I like the Herb Perez kick you in the face, knock you out type taekwondo, right? I like the Jimmy Kim kick you hard and you remember it for weeks and months after that, right? I like that style of taekwondo, but I still had to learn new school to stay relevant. So you have to bring these guys in to be relevant on the martial arts side, and then pick people out at different tiers as to what to do to become more proficient on your business side. If you're making $1,000 a month, you probably don't need to be putting out $1,000 a month in consulting to try to make yourself better. But you can still read up and associate yourself with people that have been where you are and will take you to where you want to go.
Awesome message. So there you guys have it. That is Master Isaac Costley, master of the martial arts, master of business, hero for our country as a police officer, as a member of our military, trains our military as well, motivational speaker. I feel like I want to go start 15 schools right now. That was awesome. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you guys got questions, anybody that's watching this episode, feel free to drop them down in those comments below. I'll definitely be in the comments responding to questions. Anything that you have for Master C, I'll be sure to tag him in those comments as well. And Master C, just thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone that's been tuning in. This has been episode 27 of the Jax Rudolph podcast. And don't just listen to this episode, learn from it. Thank you guys all so much, and I'll see you next time.
Take care.